Hi guys, it is Aoife from Fred Weasley Died Laughing, and I'm here with another weekly wrap up for you guys. So I just want to apologise if I sound a little bit tired or if I look a little bit tired in this video. It is pretty late on Sunday night, it is 10 o'clock and it's much later than I normally do my wrap up. I normally do it in the mornings, but I was basically gone all day today at the Dublin Horse Show. So I've just gotten back and it's the first time today that I've had time to do my wrap up. So it is later than usual and I've had a long day, so I might just be a little bit tired, so I apologise if things aren't coming out as coherently as normal, but hopefully we'll be okay. So I had a really great reading this week. I finished 5 books in total. I'm currently reading 3 others, and the first book I read this week was a book I was reading for Tome Topple, and that was Thief's Magic by Trudi Canavan. You guys would have seen this on my Tome Topple TBR and my August TBR Jar Picks TBR. So I have finished at least 1 book from my TBR jar this month, which I'm really happy about. This is one of Trudi Canavan's newest series. I think the first 2 books in this are out, so this is the first book obviously. I don't think the third one is out yet. And this follows 2 different people. It follows a boy called Tyan who lives in this world where he is studying to be a kind of sorcerer archaeologist. So he uses magic in different ways. In this world, kind of magic kind of exists in the air around them, and when they use the magic that's in the air, the magic kind of disappears for a while. So there's certain places where there's loads of magic, and there's certain places like cities where there's hardly any magic because so many different machines and stuff and other people are using magic all the time. So this follows Tyan on a expedition for his schoolwork, and he finds this book called Vela, and this book is actually a sentient being. Thousands and thousands of years ago she was actually a person who was turned into a book, and she can talk to him and read his mind, and through certain circumstances something bad happens and Tyan ends up having to go on the run with Vela, and kind of his adventures begin there, and he starts learning a lot more about the world, and a lot more about the world that Vela knew, because she is basically like hundreds of years of information from all sorts of different people. So she is a particularly precious source to have. And we are also following a girl called Raelle who is living in a world where priests are the only people that seem to have magic, and they believe that magic comes from these higher beings called angels, and if any normal person has magic, they have stolen them from the angels, so they end up getting punished for it. And Raelle can kind of see the remnants of magic, which most people can't, so she kind of lives in a lot of fear all the time that the priests will think that she is magical even though she isn't. And she ends up falling in love with this artist, and things kind of go from there with her in this other magical world. Her and Tyan's worlds are different, and that is one of the problems I kind of had with this book. I really enjoy the writing. I just do love Trudi Canavan's writing. I love her world building. She does create these amazing worlds and these amazing characters, and her way of writing magic and her flow of magic is always really, really good and really believable, and there's always this really great structure around all the type of magic that she always creates. I found that with her Black Magician series as well, that the magic in that world was, it was believable, that kind of way. There was like a learning to it, a structure to it, and yeah, I just really enjoyed that, and it was the same with this book. And I really loved Tyan's story, and I really loved Raelle's story, but the only thing is that they were 2 completely different stories. We were getting, 1 part from Tyan, 1 part from Raelle, 1 part from Tyan, 1 part from Raelle, and then it didn't seem like their worlds, they were definitely not in the same world. It didn't seem like their worlds were matching up at any point. At the end it does a little bit, but not quite enough for it to be satisfying enough for me. It just felt like I was reading 2 completely different books kind of side by side. And I would have liked either of them as just a full book, that kind of way, but it just did seem a little bit weird. I was just kind of, when is this kind of going to start, really lining up with each other, because right now they're just so separate until the very end, and as I said, it wasn't quite satisfying enough for me. So I gave it a 3.5 stars rather than 4 stars, but I did really, really enjoy this book, and I will definitely be reading the second book. The next book I read was a library book, which I've since given back to the library, so I don't have it with me, and that was Pages by Her by Slyvia Brownrigg, and this was a pretty good novel. This is about a woman called Flannery who is, she's almost 40 years old, she's married with a young daughter, daughter, and she gets invited to go to this writers' conference because she's an author, she's written a couple of books in the past when she was younger, and she gets invited to this writers' conference, and she finds out this woman that she knew from when she was a college student is going to be at this conference, and this woman called Anne was her girlfriend, was this person who she loved very, very deeply for a short amount of time when she was in college, and this woman is kind of never really left her in a way. She's always like, their relationship has always kind of been a special place in her heart, and she suddenly starts thinking about this woman again now that she is going to meet her again for the first time since they broke up, and we kind of see how she feels about kind of being this almost like suburban mom in a way, and how it's a lot different to the plans she did have for her life, and it kind of explores her relationships with the women in her life and the relationships with her men in her life, because obviously she is bisexual, and it also kind of shows her relationships with Anne and how it kind of started and ended, and the love she still has for her, and it's this kind of quiet story about this woman's life and her thoughts and how she regards the people she once loved, and I really, really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and I just thought it was this kind of quiet book about relationships and people that kind of are in your life, even if they're in your life for a little while, they make a really lasting impact, and how if you've loved this person once and lost them, there is a chance you could love them again, and I think it's also kind of shows that it's okay to still hold a love for someone even though you're also in another relationship, that kind of first love, it's okay for that to never leave you in a way, because I think everyone's first love is very, very special, and I think there is somewhere deep inside where your first love never really leaves you. There's always this tender place in your heart for your very first love, and I think this kind of showed that really well as well, and I really enjoyed that, and I gave it 4 stars, and I would really recommend it to people. The next book I read was a really interesting non-fiction one that I got from NetGalley, and it was called The Pinks by Chris Enss, and this is a short 200-page book about the Pinkerton Detective Agency, and it is about the women detectives in this detective agency, and they were the first female detectives in, I think, in the world, or definitely in America anyway, and it kind of just goes through some of the women that worked for this agency, at like the first few women detectives for this agency, and the different kind of missions that they did and things that they helped out on, and it was really, really interesting. I had no idea about this at all. I had no idea that these women existed, and they did things like they protected Abraham Lincoln when he was president-elect, and travelling to his inauguration. One of the women was kind of almost like his bodyguard in a way. She protected him on this special train journey, and she pretended to be a sister, and I thought it was so cool, and it was just really, really cool, because obviously this is a really, really old detective agency, and it's had women for such a long time, and it was short, and some of the things that they did seem a little bit over the top. There's one bit where the author said that I think the man who runs the agency, Alan Pinkerton, he was accused of making up the stories at one point, and you can kind of see why people might have thought that, because some of the stories are so wild and over the top a little bit, but they were just really fun, and if they did actually happen, they were really cool. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't give it 5 stars. I just thought there were a couple of points in the book where I felt like there was a little bit of hero worship going on with the author and Alan Pinkerton, because there was just a few times where they're saying how he was such an amazing man for his age because he had the audacity to hire women, and this kind of happened. It was kind of mentioned a few different times, and I was like, alright, yeah, he hired women. Wow, alright, I get it. And there were a few missions where it seemed like the way that they solved their cases was by hurting someone mentally. They would kind of drive someone mad in a way, and they really probed at them with their mental health, and it just made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. But overall, this was really, really interesting, and if anyone is looking for a short non-fiction read that just is a few really great stories, I would definitely say to pick this one up. The next book I read was also a NetGalley read, but it was also a buddy read with Kirsty over Kirsty's Reviews, and it was The Death of Her by Debbie Howells, and this was a pretty interesting psychological thriller. It is about this woman who's living in Cornwall. Her name is Charlotte, and then one day she hears about on the news that this woman has been found very, very close to her home. She was found almost beaten to death in these cornfields, or these wheat fields, and this woman, no one seems to know who she is. She's saying her name is Evie, and then Charlotte sees a picture of her and realises she is not a woman called Evie. She is an old school friend of hers called Jen, and she contacts the police and tells them, and they find out that this woman called Evie doesn't seem to really remember her life, but she's insisting that she had a daughter, and her daughter has now disappeared, but there doesn't seem to be like any trace of her daughter at all, like as if her daughter didn't even exist and it is all in Evie's head, but no one can really prove that it is or isn't true. So the police are still out all looking for Evie, but then there's still the mystery of who attacked Evie, and then there's this thing about the past where when Evie was Jen, she was minding a child who disappeared and was never found again. So there's like this mystery from the past that could be linked to this mystery from at the present, and Charlotte is kind of like helping the police kind of unravel the case, but this is also kind of the case of an unreliable narrator as well. You don't really know who to trust. Everyone seems a little bit iffy, and I did really enjoy this. I was really I didn't really know what was happening. There were times where I was just up and down and everywhere, and I know Kirsty felt the same because obviously we were talking about it, and yeah, we were just kind of hopping on to a few different people saying like, this person seems off and this person seems off and I don't know about this person, because at this stage both of us have read enough thrillers where we know to never trust anyone basically, and there are a few pretty cool twists and turns at the end. Obviously I don't want to say too much about this because I think like it's a bad idea to say too much about thrillers like ever, but I would say that this was quite enjoyable. There's something about the cover of this that really freaks me out, and I don't know why, because it's literally just a picture of wheat. Maybe I have a wheat phobia, I don't know, but this cover freaks me out. I don't know why. Let me know if it freaks you out as well. It just seems really dark and scary, and I don't know, it just freaks me out. But I gave this 4 stars and I did really enjoy it, and I do recommend it. And the last book I read this week was actually a reread. It's a book I've been listening to an audiobook for a couple of weeks. It is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, which is the first book in the Grishaverse. A lot of people probably know, but if you don't, it is about this magical fantasy land called Ravka, and in Ravka and in the country surrounding it, there's people that are born with magical powers. They are called Grisha, and they can have different kind of affinities. Some people have an affinity for healing, or people have an affinity for the air, or there's a special powerful Grisha called the Darkling, and he can obviously has power of darkness, and then this girl who thinks that she is just a normal soldier ends up having the power of light, and it kind of ends up changing everything in Ravka for the future, and she ends up being a very, very important part in Ravkan history, and that is all I will say about that. But I love Shadow and Bone. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars the first time I read it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars now, and on a reread on audiobook. I really enjoyed listening to it on audiobook. I just really enjoyed going back and reliving the story again because I love this story. The only thing about this, which I did find in the first book but I don't think I ever mentioned, was there is a little bit in this book where they are hunting these very, very rare special creatures, and they need to kill these creatures, and I just don't like that because I don't like animal cruelty, I don't like hunting, I don't like eating animals for meat, so yeah, it just made me feel a bit, I don't like thinking about it. So that was the only bit I don't like in this book, but everything else I love. I love the Darkling, he's my baby, I've always loved him, yes, so yeah, 5 out of 5 stars, I loved it. So I am currently reading 3 books, as I did say before. I am still listening and reading to Anna Karenina. I am here, still have a little bit to go, a little bit, but I am really enjoying this. I am buddy reading The Light Between Oceans at the moment with Karen over at Rotherby Reading. I am here, so almost halfway through. Really enjoying this. I didn't really think I'd enjoy this that much, but so far I'm really, really enjoying it. And then my big one at the moment is Lord of Shadows, and I only have this much left, so I'm really looking forward to just snuggling down and reading the rest of this. I'll finish this probably tomorrow, I think. But I am loving this so far. I really loved it. And I just had a drunk old man on the train tell me he read this 3 times, though I don't believe him. So yeah, so that was a bit odd, but I am really enjoying this. Can't wait to finish it. Yeah, love it. So that's everything I've read this week. That's everything I'm currently reading. Please let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment down below. Thank you for watching as always, and I'll see you guys again next time.